I am so fired up, guys. So I went deep into the bag here. I went for a lot of long shots, stuff with some good odds. So first up, I'm going to go Hassan Reddick to either finish with the most sacks, which you can find around 18-1, or potentially win Defensive Player of the Year. Reddick had a dominant debut season with the Philadelphia Eagles, finished with 16 sacks, second only to Nick Bosa in the league. When Jonathan Gannon was asked about how he felt about Reddick potentially winning Defensive Player of the Year award, he said that if he hadn't dropped him into coverage so much, that he likely would have had 20-plus sacks. That might sound like hyperbole, but I actually believe I agree with that. He was covering tight ends way too much, in my opinion. That's something I think we're going to see change this year with Sean Desai as the defensive coordinator for the Eagles as well. He had the fewest pass rush snaps, only 428 of any player that finished in the top 10 in sacks.
Wow.
So I still feel like there's a lot of upside here, Will. So yeah, I really like this spot for Reddick. I think he is a dominant edge defender, plays the run very well, as well, sort of an underrated aspect of his game. But just as far as pure pass rushers are concerned, I think he is as good as any player in the NFL right now. I also think it helps being on this dominant Eagles team, which improved their front seven. So I think that the Eagles defense potentially could be the #1 defense, or at least a top 5 defense, and then we're looking at potentially the best player on that defense. So usually there's a correlation there with winning Defensive Player of the Year when we're talking about a defense that has this much potential. So I like Reddick to potentially win the award or even potentially post 20-plus sacks here. Then we're going to go Emmanuel Forbes to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. This was Commander's draft pick, selected 16th overall. He was a 3-year standout in the SEC. He had 14 interceptions as a 3-year starter, returned 6 of those for touchdowns. That is an NCAA record. He has elite ball skills for a corner. He looks like a wide receiver playing cornerback. I also think he's going into a really good situation. The Commanders quietly had a very good defense, also had a top 5 secondary as well as far as yards allowed. So he's stepping into a good situation, in my opinion, and then offers plenty of playmaking ability. Going to be in the NFC East, probably tasked with slowing down CeeDee Lamb, A.J. Brown. So we'll get a lot of attention there. I think there's just a lot of similarities between Sauce Gardner and Forbes, honestly. I think they play with a similar swag as well. So I think this guy is a great look at around 20-1 to potentially win Defensive Rookie of the Year award. So I like that one quite a bit. And then we're going to go to Chicago. I think this Bears team is getting a little too much hype, guys. I like an all total here, under 5.5 wins. I just think they're a long ways away before they're competing for the division or even flirting with a 500 record. I think Justin Fields is obviously extremely dynamic, dual threat quarterback. He displayed some unbelievable upside, but the talent is undeniable. I just have massive durability concerns with him. Just takes way too many unnecessary hits. 55 sacks, led the NFL last season as well. I thought the Bears would really prioritize upgrading their offensive line more in the offseason. I didn't really think they did enough there outside of the draft pick that they made, the top 10 tackle there. But yeah, I just think when you go out and you pay 2 off-ball linebackers, which they did, rather than improving the defensive line, they don't really have a viable edge rusher, rather than really kind of adding more additions to their offensive line as well. I just think there's very little depth in the trenches for the Bears, both offensively and defensively. There's so many holes. This was a historically bad defense last season. I do not really see it being any different this year. And then I just think Fields, it's a long shot for him to get through 17 games. So I think this Bears team is going to really struggle. I think they're going to give up a ton of points. So I like their alt total under 5.5 wins here. Then we're going to go to Detroit, Jahmyr Gibbs to potentially win the Offensive Rookie of the Year. You can find this around 10-1 odds. When he was selected 12th overall by Detroit, guys, I was a little perplexed with the whole thing, right? But like more and more as I studied Gibbs, his game tape and kind of the pick, I actually kind of fell in love with both him and the situation. Obviously, we know Bijan Robinson drafted 4 picks in front of him. He's the overwhelming favorite to win this award. I believe he's about plus 250, but I think Gibbs should be a lot a lot closer. He is an elite talent, in my opinion, offers one of the more versatile skill sets of any running back in the NFL. Reminds me a lot of like an Austin Eckler, Jamal Charles, Alvin Kamara. I think he just has incredible receiving skills and just elite acceleration, and he's stepping into a great situation in Detroit. They have a great offensive line. They only have David Montgomery standing in his way as well. I also heard rumblings that the Lions were comfortable originally taking Gibbs at 6 overall. So I think they've had plans, big plans for him in this offense for a very long time. I think he's going to come in. He's playing in a soft division, plays in a dome. He's got a quarterback in Jared Goff who loves checking down, loves peppering the running backs with targets. We also have a bit of an idea of what the role will potentially look like, looking at DeAndre Swift, who was very productive, couldn't stay on the field much. But yeah, I think Gibbs is like a 2.0 version of that and just possesses one of the most elite skill sets of any running backs in the NFL. I think he's going to hit the ground running. I think he has a great shot to win the Offensive Rookie of the Year. And then we're going to go a little contrarian here. I'm going to fade Tyreek Hill under 1,300 receiving yards. That is just a gargantuan number, whether your name's Tyreek Hill, whether your name's Justin Jefferson, just very big. Hill can have a great season and still stay under 1,300 yards. In 5 of his 7 years in the NFL, he's been held under this. He averages 1,191 yards per game over his career. I just think with Tua, I think he's one concussion away from a potentially career-ending injury. So that kind of casts a lot of doubt over Tyreek's season. And then if Tua stays healthy, Tyreek, obviously, when you're talking about a guy with that much speed, a soft tissue injury here or there, could miss a couple games. And then he had the most productive season of his career. From a historical standpoint, when you have an outlier season like that, you typically are a major regression candidate in the following year. So I just think this is way too big of a number. I think it should be closer to 1,200, maybe 1,150 here. So yeah, I'm going to go under on Tyreek, 1,300 yards as well.
I like them all. I mean, look, the Tyreek thing, I that's not going to be at the top of my list, but I completely agree. It's one of those where the number's absurd. I mean, he went over 1,300 twice in his career, once in 2018 when he had 137 targets. And then last year when he had 170 targets. I mean, he had 159 in Kansas City in 2021. So, I mean, like it's not insane that he could get up to 170 targets is a ton for a guy like Tyreek Hill. I think they wanted to make sure that it was, he was, let everybody know that he was worth what they paid for him in the trade and all of that. And of course he was in terms of production on the field. But yeah, if Tua's down, all of a sudden this number you could see him hit 1,200, have a great year, have 1,200, 10 touchdowns, have a monster year, but not get 1,700. So I don't mind that one. I think I love the Reddick stuff. I think I would go more sacks. I would go most sacks over DPOY only because when you go most sacks, like I love the fact that the stat least number of pass rush attempts of all those guys in the top 10, but like you don't bring in the human element in it as much with the DPOY thing or with the most sacks, because DPOY you're relying on people literally like Pete Prisco who are voting this, and who knows what that maniac could do at any point in time. Whereas most sacks, you just get the most sacks and you win. Like he could get up to 21 and you've already locked it in. So I think my top 3 here would be Bears alt under 5.5 wins. I've thought about this like 50 times, but everyone is convinced that the Bears psychologically are convinced that the Bears were the 9th worst team in football last year because they picked it number 9 because that trade happened so early. No, they were the worst team in football. They stunk. Their offense was completely like nothing until they said, screw it, we're going to let Justin Fields run. And Justin Fields started really running for his life. And he was like the most sacked and led the all quarterbacks in rushing yards. Like that is not a sustainable offense. And DJ Moore is great. They upgraded the offensive line, but these are not pieces that suddenly take you from the worst team in football to a 10-win team. And I think that's what Bears fans are expecting. So you're getting the 3-1 and they just have to win 5 games. They can go 5-12 and have a good season because Justin Fields looks better. The off-ball linebackers are key for Matt Eberflus's defense, but that doesn't mean they're going to come in and change everything. You still need a secondary. You still need a pass rush. I don't think they have enough there after stripping it all down. So that's one for me. I'll go Reddick most sacks at 2. And I think if you do most sacks, you should sprinkle defensive player of the year as well, because it's 25-1. And, you know, he could not get the most sacks and still win defensive player of the year, although that would be a little surprising. I like the Forbes thing too. He's just a ball hawk and a playmaker. You need to score touchdowns as a cornerback to win defensive rookie of the year. We saw that with Marcus Peters. And maybe there was somebody else who did it recently. But Gibbs, I think, too. So Gibbs is my third. So Bears 1, Reddick 2, and then Gibbs 3. Gibbs, like to your point, Alex, you know, yeah, the Lions love this guy. And we might not like the idea of taking a running back in the first round or taking a guy who's not like a special generational prospect at number 12. But the reality is he's going into a great situation with a really good offensive line and not a ton of competition. So you have to be able to separate, I don't like this pick because it's a running back that early, with this guy could still win offensive rookie of the year, and he's overpriced because people don't like the setup. When Detroit, in reality, much better opportunity than Atlanta to run the ball aggressively, especially in the second half.
I agree. First of all, I like all of these, and I like all of the ones that Brinson likes. Slightly different order here.
By the way, you guys are not going to like all of mine. I can promise that.
Okay. Can't wait. Can't wait for the Brinson model TM. So Tyreek Hill under 1,300.5 receiving yards. It's not something that I would have originally thought of Propstars. So I do appreciate you putting this on here. And yes, the fact that he hasn't gone over this number, but maybe twice, and he doesn't average around this number, and all of the question marks with Tua do put up a lot of question marks to what Tyreek Hill. Now, he did come off of his best year ever, as you said, and a lot of those, you know, a few of those games at least, he did not have Tua at center, but this is a very, very inflated number. So I agree with you on that one. The Chicago Bears, I don't know, maybe because my dad's from Chicago, I feel a little bit like they're going to be better this year. Yes, they only had 3 wins. They were the worst team in the NFL last year. To get them to 5 wins, 2 more wins makes sense. I kind of believe that. I don't think they're going to get this. Their real line is 7.5. I think they're going under that. I don't think they're an 8-win team. I can see them getting over 5, but I'm not mad at this value at plus 290. So I'll put that as my second. But I actually really love this Hassan Reddick to have the most sacks. I mean, you look at last year, and it's like you said, Propstars, he set a record for the Eagles with most sacks in a single season. He had 3.5 sacks in the postseason in 2 games alone. I actually bet him, you know, the Super Bowl, there is an expansive menu from our friends over at Caesar Sportsbook on what you can bet. There was a multiple sack prop for Hassan Reddick, and I hammered that so fast. It was at like plus 500 or something really crazy, because I thought about that 2020 game when he was with the Cardinals. He had 5 sacks in a single game. I thought there's no way that this guy isn't going to get to the quarterback. And guess what? 0 sacks in the Super Bowl. So you know he's got a little chip on his shoulder too. He's going to come out there, be hungry this year. Love him to get the most sacks. And yes, if you're going to do that, you got to sprinkle a little bit on defensive player of the year. So Brinson, we have to figure out, are we going to go Hassan Reddick sacks? Because we both really like that one. I know that the Bears are your number one.
No, we go Reddick. Yeah, go Reddick, but just make sure we get defensive player of the year as well. So like
yes.
I don't know, like half, I mean, you do half a unit each, maybe. I mean,
okay. Yeah.
Or 3, you know, 3/4, you know, 0.75 and 0.25, something like that. I mean, I don't know, Alex. How would you think they're pretty even in terms of how you, like, if he has the most sacks, he's probably winning defensive player of the year?
Yeah, that's how I personally feel. And I just feel, you know, I totally agree with your point too, Will. I would rather, I'd like the sacks look a little bit more as the defensive player of the year is more narrative based, and that's more kind of statistical based if he has 20 sacks. But yeah.
Like, he could have 20, and I mean, I'm just using him as an example because he came on the show. Like Nick Bosa could have a monster final 3 games and finish with 19.5. And people could say, well, the Niners got the 1 seed and the Eagles got the 2 seed. So we're going to vote for Nick Bosa as defensive player of the year, even though Reddick beats him out in sacks. Like, that's a totally viable scenario. And you don't want to be caught holding just the defensive player of the year, and then he leads the league in sacks, and you're like, oh my God. And you don't want to be caught with like just most sacks. And then it's reverse where Nick Bosa has 20, Eagles get the 1 seed, Reddick goes nuts the final 3 games of the season. Like, that's why you probably want to chop it up a little bit.
Yeah, I'm probably going like a 3/4 unit and then a 1/4 unit if we're just talking 1 unit here. Yeah, and I do want to say, Katie, I blame the field condition for Reddick not cashing that bet for you in the Super Bowl.
Yes.
So
yeah.
Yes.